Hello, everyone. We're here today with Robb Ryan of Robb Ryan's Drum Lessons. My name's Terry Kane. I'm with Davenport Realty. We're here for another Local Leaders Spotlight campaign. So, Robb, welcome. Let's have a chat.
Let's do it, Terry.
Okay, so Robb, drum lessons. Seems like every kid at some point probably wanted to learn the drums. You can certainly correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, that's probably true.
How did your business get started and got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I've been teaching drum lessons a very, very long time, probably about 25, 30 years into my teenage years. And it just came from, I excelled at playing the drums as a teenager. And when I was in high school, pretty much every drummer came to me asking, how do you do this? How do you do that? Which of course turned into sitting down and doing a formal lesson. And then as I got a little bit older, I worked at a local music store where I also taught, and realized that a lot of people started coming to me saying, well, if I pay you cash, will you do it out of your house? Which I think a lot of people is where they get their start on their business. So that's kind of where it started. I stepped away from it for a little while when we had kids, and an old high school friend of mine just wouldn't leave me alone on Facebook. He had a son that he wanted to play drums, and he said, you're the only person I want to teach him. And I think it was like every day or every other day, he'd come to me on Messenger and be like, hey, you ready to teach? You ready to teach? And so I have to thank Steve because he kind of got me back into it a lot of years ago. But yeah, so that's basically how we got going here.
Did he take a cut?
No, he did not. He did not. But I do actually still teach his son all these years later. And his son is auditioning for Humber College
nice.
Jazz program. Not this spring, it'll be next spring. And we give him a little bit of a discount on his rate just because he got me going.
Right.
For sure.
So where, like, being in a small town like Grimsby,
Yep.
Where do your students typically come from?
Well, I have students from all over. A lot of my students come from Grimsby, Beamsville, Winona. I also have students as far away as Scranton, Pennsylvania, London, UK, that they do it virtually. I have two students in Ottawa, one in Sudbury, and even like some people, even St. Catharines, Welland, that I do virtually. But a lot of my students, I'd say more than half, come from this direct area.
So they come right to your house?
Come right to my house,
your
absolutely.
In-house?
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, what would be the difference between personal and virtually? Like, how would you get the same thing?
No, you don't. I mean, when we're doing in-person lessons, I can correct your posture. I can correct your technique. I can really hear the sound that you're getting out of the instrument, because unless you're a drummer, you don't realize that not every drummer sounds the same. I could take 10 different drummers, put them all on my drum set. They're all going to sound different, even though it's the same drum set, because we all have different feel and different technique, and we use different sticks and different muscle structures. So that's what I get to hear, is the sound that you're getting out of the drums. And I can immediately tell from the sound that you're getting whether you're letting the sticks do the work, or if you're muscling it out, if you're using good technique. So, I mean, in-person lessons are always the way. I oftentimes say it's like, you can't do chiropractor appointments over virtually, right? There's things that they can look at posturally, but they can't fix you.
Not yet, anyway.
That's right. Not yet. Maybe with AI, but where we stand with drums, I would much rather teach in person for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And what kind of age group is typically your target audience?
I will teach anybody, to be honest. I like to kind of not teach anybody under the age of 8. And then I have people that are in their 60s that, they just want to play the drums as a stress reliever. I have CEOs of companies that just want to learn how to play their favorite songs because they had a hard week at the office, and it's just they want to come home every night and play their instrument for half an hour or an hour every day.
So it could be some kind of a therapy, whether relaxation
100%.
therapy, stress therapy, whatever the case. Right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, universities teach music therapy. That's a degree. So it's well known that not just drumming, but music in general is very therapeutic. So a lot of people, if they go home after a long day or whatever, they play their instrument, it's like hitting a heavy bag, for lack of a better, it really is, because, you can get out some aggression, and you're definitely getting the hormones going, the endorphins and whatnot. You're getting the blood flowing a little bit. So yeah, of course you're going to feel a little bit better about yourself.
Right. I don't know if you ever did this, but like, if I'm watching a band, drummers seem to be the most fit and physically challenged instrument, I guess, if you will, in the band.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there breathing techniques or
Well, I mean, generally,
calories would you burn?
well, here's the thing: the better you are, the less calories you burn, because we do everything from a natural. You know, it's not unlike, you know, if you watch somebody, running. And they have poor technique, they're going to have a harder time breathing, and they're going to burn more calories. They're going to sweat more because they're not doing everything right. If you're taught properly, and you're letting the drumsticks do the work, gravity do the work, you're actually doing half the work. And not to say you're not going to burn calories. Of course you're going to burn calories, but yes, and we generally are. I guess the more fit of the,
right.
We're not.
And even like muscle structure too, from.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that a lot of that comes from, you know, your arms are up in the air a lot. Abdominals, of course, you're holding your body upright. Your core has to be strong. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to it outside of just, you know, music.
So have you ever had a student say, I'm in it for the physical fitness aspect?
No, I never have, actually. I would probably turn them away if that was their sole reason for doing it.
There's other exercises you could do.
But, you know, ironically enough, they do teach fitness classes now where you hold drumsticks in your hand. So, you know, maybe we just push them towards that.
Yeah, so any kind of medical ailments like carpal tunnel from?
Yeah, you can. And I actually...
repetitiveness?
Yeah, I suffered from some ligament damage when I was a teenager from not playing properly. You know, holding the sticks too tight, repetitive use injuries, again, not playing properly. If you're using proper technique, I mean, it goes for anything, of course, but, you know, when I'm holding a drumstick, you could actually pull the stick out of my hand. There's no tension in my hands. You don't get fast or get a nice sound from your instrument if there's tension. Right. The second that there's tension, everything tightens up. So does your drumstick. And we're hitting something that resonates. So if I hit something that resonates when I'm tight, you're not going to get the resonance from one head to the other. It's going to stifle that resonance. You're just not going to get a good sound. And then, of course, we all know what happens to joints and ligaments and muscles when we tighten up. Yeah. That's where repetitive use injuries absolutely happen.
So learning the drums can also give you some scientific edge too.
100%. And I do. And I do actually take that road with people. I do have a personal training background as well, where I hold multiple certificates in that field. So I can talk a lot about the body and what your body's doing as we're drumming and whatnot.
I would think that would be an important aspect of the learning curve and going through that to become a more efficient and more productive drummer.
100%. 100%. Well, who doesn't want to do less work and get twice the results? It doesn't matter what it is, right?
Find me somebody. Exactly. So if you were to give one piece of advice to like all students, what would that be and why?
Consistency. It's literally just consistency of practice. I see this a lot with my beginners where they come in and they, you know, one of the first questions I always ask them is, how was your week of practice? And I don't mean how long did you practice? I don't care how long you practice, just how was your week of practice? Because it is an incredibly frustrating instrument. I mean, we're trying to get 4 different limbs to do what our brain's telling them to do. And oftentimes we know what we want our limbs to do. They just won't do it, right? Because we haven't built up that level of coordination. So I'm trying to judge from that question, you know, how frustrated are you with the lesson material that I gave you last week? And a lot of the beginners will come in and go, well, today I got an hour's practice and on Saturday I did a half an hour. Okay, that's not going to get you anywhere. So consistency, I then have to, you know, and I always do explain this up front, but oftentimes, you know, you do have to explain it several times. 10 minutes a day is better than an hour once a week. Right? Because the way our brain operates and learns is through consistency, not through a single effort.
Right.
So that would be the one thing I would say to anybody learning any instrument. It's just the consistency every day. Most of us can get 10 or 15 minutes a day. It's hard to say, oh, I got to find an hour.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. You know, but that 10 or 15 minutes, then you start to get better. And then you start to find that extra 15 minutes every day.
Because you're enjoying it more. And
absolutely.
That 10 or 15 minutes turns into half an hour without even thinking about it.
Exactly. So that would be the number one thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, with drums, what is the significance of a drum in a band as far as timing or setting the tone or whatever that case might be? Yeah.
Well, I mean, number one for the other musicians, it's literally that it's keeping time. But I think we'll all agree, you know, if you go to, you hear any music, people tap their toe. Well, what are they tapping their toe to? Well, it's to the beat,
Right.
obviously. Well, what creates that beat, right? It's the drummer and the bass player. And the drummer and the bass player, they work together, hand in hand, and they create what we call a pocket, which just means that they're playing well and they're sitting right in the groove. So, I mean, yes, you can have a band without a drummer, and there's lots of duos that play out and stuff, but you're not going to have people tapping their toes and up dancing like you would if you had a drummer.
Right.
Right. So the drummer's number one job is literally that, is just to keep the beat, keep the groove. That's what, the guitar player and the singer at that point don't have to worry about it, and they can do their job properly. I mean, that's the thing. As a drummer, if I'm on stage, my job is to make everybody else sound good.
Right.
And if I get to sound good in the process, that's great, but that's not my job.
Right.
Right.
I think drums, personally, is one of the only instruments that can actually feel through your whole entire body.
100%. Yeah. When you hit that bass drum, especially if it's through a PA system, you hit the bass drum and it comes back and hits you right in the chest.
You feel the ground shake sometimes.
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So you've been doing this you mentioned you've been doing this for years.
Yes.
So how did COVID affect or change how you did business?
Well, I had to pivot. So I literally went from doing all of my lessons in person. I mean, I had a couple that were virtual, that, the people that live a long ways away, they were the only virtual ones, but everybody else, I had people driving 45 minutes to an hour to come and see me. And when COVID hit, I had to go virtual with everybody, whether it was, the kid across the street. I had to go virtual almost 100%. And it really changed my perspective on how to do business and what people wanted out of this instrument. And I think it allowed me to kind of reinvent the way that I do lessons. And it's been a very positive thing for me and for my business.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you just switched the way you did things and 100%. Still didn't miss a beat, so to speak.
No, I didn't. I did not miss a beat.
No pun intended there. Have you witnessed any, other than COVID, have you witnessed any significant changes to who's coming to want to play drums? Or
yeah, I've noticed that there's a lot more girls. There's a lot of girls. Years ago, it was almost unheard of that a young lady would want to come and take drum lessons. It just wasn't right. And I would say I probably have, I don't know, 6 or 7 girls now, that and everything from grade 6 to like grade 12.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it's everything in between. And they seem to be the more serious student over the boys, which is odd. They seem to know what they like musically and what they don't like, and they're not ashamed to tell you. And it's great. I actually quite enjoy it. But that would be the biggest change of who I've seen coming, is just girls in general.
Awesome. That's great. It's great to see. So one of the things I saw on your website that I thought was rather impressive is that you're one of the top 10 educators in the drum lesson business.
Yep.
Can you explain that and how that comes to be?
Well, I don't know 100% how it comes to be, other than just being detail oriented, listening to your students, kind of propelling them to where they want to go. I've had students that have gone on to the Berklee School of Music, Humber College. I've taught students that have come out of the U of T music program, Humber College, Mohawk College. And I mean, it's just being there and still getting them to the next level, and always having something for them to push, to get to. And, I have a bunch of students that have gone on to tour the world, go on to get endorsements from drum companies and cymbal companies. And I've helped them through that process because I've been through that myself. And I mean, it just really comes down to caring about your students, which I think is what gets you there.
Right.
Yeah.
And through your learnings, do you have a mentor, or do you still do lessons? Or
I don't anymore. It's just a timing thing anymore. I have had several teachers that have been mentors to me. Kevin Dempsey, when I was at Mohawk College, was a big mentor to me. He was actually he was my first teacher that sat me down and said, you can't learn everything out of a book. Because prior to that, I was very, book smart, books, just get as good as I could get book smart wise. And Kevin was really the first guy that I guess was brave enough, for lack of a better term, to come in and say, hey bud, like it's not all out of a book. Like, we need to start pulling apart music and figuring out, why did the drummer play this versus how much more could we have played, and and what lesson was that out of what book.
Right.
So yeah, I think Kevin was probably my biggest mentor in that regard. I didn't learn the most from Kevin in terms of how to play the drums, but I think I learned the most out of how to be a musician and teacher from Kevin. Even though, and I mean, obviously I've already said he was one of my biggest mentors, I don't believe that, technically he's one of the best teachers. He's a great teacher, but it was his approach.
Right.
That, the way that he befriended me as a student. And I've tried to do that with all of my students, where it's about more than the drums. It's, if you have a bad week practicing, there's oftentimes reasons for it. I want to know why. And a lot of my students open up to me. It's almost like I'm a hairdresser where they will open up to me, because the chances of me telling anybody in their circle are very low, but it also tells me why they're where they're at. Right. So, I learned that from Kevin for sure.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So if anybody out there listening and watching wants to learn the drums and become the next great, whether you want to become the next great drummer, percussionist, or you just want to do it for self-fulfillment,
100%.
How do we reach you, Rob?
Best way is just through my Gmail account. It's just Robb Ryan, so ROBBRYAN 001 at gmail.com.
Perfect. And you do have a website.
I do also have a website,
right?
yes. It's RobbRyanDrums.com.
Perfect. That's great. Well, thanks, Rob. We really enjoyed it. And
Thank you.
You've almost made me want to take up the drums.